Scout was already off the floor by the time the bell over the door rang twice in 1 minute, which never happened, and I should have clocked that before I clocked anything else. The first ring was Mrs. Calloway, same as every third day for 11 years, same canvas bag, same complaint about the relay tax. The second ring, not 40 seconds later, was Mrs. Calloway again. Same coat. Same bag. Same voice asking after the relay tax before she'd even reached the counter. I run a trading post on a demilitarized corridor between two species who'd rather not look at each other. You learn to keep your face still. I kept mine still and looked at the dog instead, because Scout had an opinion about everybody who walked through that door and he hadn't expressed it yet, which was its own kind of expression. "That's not me," the first one said, pointing at the second. Flat. Not panicked. The kind of flat that comes from a person who has had this exact thought before and hated having it. The second one didn't argue. She set her bag down slow, the way you'd set down something you didn't want to startle, and said, "I came in through the south ring. I have a manifest to clear." Same voice. Same chip in the same tooth. Scout stood up off the floorboards by the register, walked halfway to the counter, and stopped. He didn't growl. He didn't bristle. He just stopped, the way he stopped at the edge of the loading dock when the gravity plating ran hot, and looked at both of them with the same flat patience he gave a stove he wasn't sure had cooled. 3-12 traders at the bulk grain shelf had gone still, watching two identical women argue ownership of a face, which is the kind of thing that draws a crowd on any world. One of them, an old broker named Yaith who'd been crossing my floor for 6 years, leaned toward me and said, "Lo, which is real, keeper?" "Working on it," I said. What I was actually doing was watching the dog. Scout had met every regular on this corridor by scent before he'd met them by sight, and he had never, not once, failed to close the distance to Mrs. Calloway. She kept dried liver in that canvas bag for him and he knew it before she cleared the door. He had not moved an inch toward either woman in front of me now. The first Calloway said her papers were in her coat. The second said hers had been lifted on the crossing and she'd come straight here to report it, please, before the window closed on the cargo she had standing in the south yard. She said please like a woman who'd practiced being believed. The first one's hands were shaking. I noticed that and put it away to think about later, because the second one's hands were not, and a woman accused of being a fraud usually shakes less than the woman doing the accusing, not more. I asked them both, separately, what they'd had for breakfast at the boarding house on the ridge, the only boarding house on this rock, the kind of question nobody prepares an answer for. The first one named the cook's name and the burnt edge on the bread. The second one said she'd skipped breakfast, voice perfectly even, and moved straight back to the subject of her cargo, like a conversation that kept trying to wander off a marked trail and kept getting walked back onto it. Yaith's two companions had stopped pretending to shop. One of them, younger, asked me in passable trade pidgin whether this was a custody dispute or a crime, and I told him I didn't know yet, and he said something to the older broker in their own clicking dialect that I didn't catch and didn't ask him to repeat. I asked for the chip-tooth side first, casual, like I was asking for ID out of habit. Both turned their heads the same way. Both showed the same chip. That's when the second one took a step toward the vault door behind the counter, not fast, not furtive, just a woman walking toward a door she had every right to walk toward if her story was true, and Scout came off his stop and put himself in the gap between her and that door without seeming to hurry at all. He sat down. That's the whole of what he did. Sat, in front of a locked door, looking up at her with the same soft brown patience he'd give a kid holding a treat too high to reach. She looked down at him and said, "Move," quiet enough that only I was close enough to hear it. He didn't. I want to be honest about what that looked like from where I stood, because it looked like nothing. A yellow dog sitting in a doorway. If you'd walked in off the street you'd have thought the dog was in everyone's way and the lady was being patient with him. That's the trouble with this dog, and the trouble with every dog like him on this corridor. Calm reads as harmless to anyone who's never had to be afraid of something calm. She tried a different angle next. She crouched, slow, knees cracking the way a tired person's knees crack, and held a hand out flat the way you do for a dog that doesn't know you, palm up, fingers loose, every motion textbook correct and a half-second too rehearsed. Scout looked at the hand. He didn't sniff it. He didn't lean away from it either, he simply held his sit, eyes on her face, and let the hand hang there in the air between them until she put it down again. The real Mrs. Calloway, and I didn't know yet which one that was, only that I trusted the dog's math more than mine, said, "Scout, baby, come here, soft," the way she always called him over for the liver. Scout's ears went up. He turned his head a half-inch toward her voice. He did not get up off the doorway he was guarding. The second woman tried the door handle behind her without looking at it, found it locked, and turned back to me with the relay tax complaint already loaded in her mouth like nothing had happened. Like a dog sitting in front of a vault was a weather report and nothing more. "He's never done this," she said. "He must be sick. Get him out of the way and I'll clear my manifest and be gone." "He's not sick," I said. "Then he's in the way of a paying customer." "He's not that either." The threld broker, Yithe, had gone quiet at the grain shelf, watching with the particular stillness his species does when they've decided a thing has stopped being entertaining and started being dangerous. Threld don't keep animals themselves, no biology back home that runs warm and loyal the way ours does, but 6 years on this corridor had taught him to read a human room, and he read this one fast. "Keeper," he said. "The manifest she's asking to clear." "What's in the south yard?" I hadn't thought to ask. I should have led with it. "Cargo," the second Calloway said, already moving for the door, unhurried, recalculating out loud the way people do when a plan stops working and they're deciding how much of it to salvage. "Routine cargo. I'll come back when your dog's had his rest." She didn't run. That's the part that still gets me. She walked out at exactly the pace of a woman who has somewhere else to be and no reason to hurry, bell over the door ringing once behind her, calm all the way to the threshold. Scout didn't chase her. He stood up off the vault door, walked the rest of the way to the real Mrs. Calloway, and put his head against her hip the way he did every third day of every week for 11 years, and that was the whole of it. No noise. No blood. The fight, if you could call it that, had been a dog declining to move and a woman deciding that wasn't worth pushing. It took 2 days for the corridor patrol to find what was actually sitting in the south yard, which was nothing, an empty manifest slip, a cargo bay that had never held cargo, registered under a shell company that didn't survive a second look. Whoever she'd been, she'd needed 30 seconds alone past that vault door and a witness too rattled to ask the right question, and she'd needed the room to believe a face it had known for 11 years over a dog that had known the same face for 6. Mrs. Calloway, the real one, the one with the chipped tooth and the liver in her bag, was found 3 docking rings over, locked in a maintenance closet, furious and unhurt and demanding to know who'd taken her coat. She never did get a straight answer on what the other one had wanted past that door, and neither did I, and neither, I think, did the patrol. She still comes in every third day. Still complains about the relay tax. Scout still meets her at the door before the bell finishes ringing, tail going like a metronome, the same as he always did, and I've never once had to wonder, since, whether it was really her. I just watched the dog. He hasn't been wrong yet.